it's challenging. So if you're out there and you're not sure what to do and you've like stumbled across this conversation, um,
Mhm.
as much as I can say, oh, I followed my intuition and things like that. Um, the first few days of my daughter's birth, all of that went out the window, and I lost myself completely in that postpartum phase. And I wasn't able to hear my own voice and to trust my own voice. And it took me a while to come back. So it's okay to not know, to not hear.
Mhm.
Just set the intention. And if it comes, it comes. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. Because if there's one thing moms are good at, it's beating ourselves up. And so I
Right.
wouldn't want somebody to hear my story about how I listen to my own inner voice and use it as a way to weaponize themselves for not knowing what the answer is.
Right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Soul Sisterhood Birthing Journey podcast, where we share our birthing stories to share our wisdom and empower each other. And today I have my dear friend, Amy, as my guest.
Hello.
Hi, Amy. How are you feeling today?
I'm good. I've been with the baby all day, so
Uh-huh.
I a little rush, starting to settle in, excited to talk with you.
Mm-hmm. Me too. So, baby Mila,
Yes. Almost
and
1 months.
yes. So that's very recent delivery. So Amy and I've been friends about 5 years, going on 5 years, and we met in school, the Brennan School of Healing, where we study human energy consciousness system for like self transformation and or learning alternative healing modalities to help heal the humanity. That's what we're studying in school. Yeah. But before we go into your story too far in, I want you to share yourself a little bit, like who you are, what you do, what your family is like, anything you'd like to share.
Well, I've been a registered nurse for about 16 years now, primarily in intensive care. And I came about that career during my first pregnancy when I was 19, which I shared a little bit about. Such a different experience than.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then I also am in the Barbara Brennan School of Healing, currently in year 4, about to graduate. Woo woo.
Woohoo!
And my husband and I have been together for, oh gosh, almost as long as I've been a nurse, maybe a little bit longer. I think we met
Mm-hmm.
at nursing school. And so
Also, he's a nurse too?
no, but I was in nursing school when I met him.
Oh, okay.
Yes, yes. Um, and then he's in the business world. I
Mm-hmm.
make me giggle to think about my husband as a nurse. So him and I had like a 10-year journey trying to have a child and all the ups and
Mm-hmm.
downs that went along with
Mm-hmm.
that. And then Mila joined us last May. So
Mm-hmm.
May 12th, she will be 1 year old. It's very exciting.
Wow. Yeah. So you have Mila and 19
Jason.
years ago. Yeah, Jason. Yeah. And then
Jason and
you're going to share two birthing stories today.
yeah, so Jason was will be 20 in May. So I
Mm-hmm.
moved him to college and then
Mm-hmm.
at the end of that week got pregnant.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Something there in May, your fertility, the flow. Um, so it's a very different, I know a little bit about both stories, and it is very interesting and very different experience of two birthing stories. And I really feel like this is like you're speaking for so many mother, you're speaking for a lot of women. And I'm hoping that a lot of women more come out to share their birthing stories to share wisdom and powerful a lesson today, because I feel very like fiery today, like knowing your story a little bit. And so, yeah, if you're ready, I'm here with all ears.
Right. So I'm going to start with Jason because he came first.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And his story really shapes how I proceeded through my second pregnancy and birth. So I was 18 when I got pregnant. It was not planned. And I took the morning after pill. So ladies, they don't always work.
Yeah,
Please don't
they
work.
don't. Yeah.
uh, and so the pregnancy itself was very uneventful. I was really healthy. I was young. I had, I mean, almost no issues whatsoever.
Hmm.
And the staff at my doctor's office, the different doctors really treated me like a teenager. They did not respect that I was an autonomous, independent human being. They kind of looked at
Hmm.
my age and I didn't feel supported. I didn't feel
Hmm.
listened to. I remember at one point I asked if I could just see one doctor because every time I came in, I had a new doctor. I'm not sure. There's some of them I only ever even saw one time because of how
Hmm.
many practice. And so they told me no, because you need to know who your provider is going to be when you deliver. And so
Hmm.
the reason I share that is because when I actually did deliver my child, it was not a doctor from that practice and it was someone that I had never met. So
Wow.
I had sought after something that I really needed, which was just
Hmm.
one person, like just one piece of information, one
Hmm.
opinion. Because as I'm sure you know, working in this field, every doctor has their own spin on
Hmm.
things, do
Hmm.
things their own way. And I was young and I didn't have guidance and I felt very lost. So by the time my delivery was being discussed,
Hmm.
they were convinced that Jason was going to be too big.
Hmm.
So I didn't feel he was going to be too big, but I tried to argue with a doctor, as you would say,
Hmm.
like they know I have to listen to them. And so I did agree to the induction. And when I went into the hospital the evening before he was born, it was, again, fairly uneventful. The uh, Okay, I do want to back up a little bit and say this. I had a male doctor that I only saw one time, and it was getting
Hmm.
close to the end. And I asked him how I would know if I was in labor. And the reason I want to share this is because he was so nasty to me. Like it was going to be the most obvious thing ever. You just
Hmm.
like the movies, your water breaks, and it's this whole. And
Hmm.
I did a lot of research during my second pregnancy, and it is not that obvious all the time.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it goes at different rates, and there's all these things. So, again, it was just, me kind of trying to seek out information and not really being heard and
Hmm.
respected in that. And so it was funny. I was like, okay, here I am, an adult for my second pregnancy. And I'm still not really sure if I'm going to know if I'm going in labor. People go in
Right.
all the time in false labor. So,
Hmm.
um, again, I concede to them. They must know what they're talking about. Okay, fine. So we get there. They induce me. They give me something to thin my cervix. I sleep in the hospital overnight. The
Hmm.
next day, they start Pitocin. And I had really wanted to have a natural birth. That was just what I always assumed would happen. I had talked to my doctors about this. Nobody recommended any kind of a birthing class or any information whatsoever on natural ways to control pain, what the environment would look like. Uh,
Hmm.
I wasn't really educated on pain control options prior to my
Hmm.
delivery.
Hmm.
And so when they started the Pitocin, I was not prepared. My
Hmm.
contractions were coming every minute to every 2 minutes, and I was like not in active labor at all. I mean, I wasn't
Hmm.
dilated, I wasn't effaced, none of the things. So I opted for an epidural, not knowing that meant I wasn't going to be able to get out of bed or really move or any of these things. And again, I conceded, okay, you guys know what you're talking about, fine. And
Hmm.
it was time for Jason to come out and nobody would use me. They went and got a doctor. They're like, give her more pain medicine. Nobody would check me.
Hmm.
And I think something changes in our bodies when we're in active
Hmm.
labor, when we're going
Hmm.
through transition for a lot of
Right.
women.
Mm-hmm.
And it certainly did for me. It was like, fuck all of you, if I can say that
Mm-hmm.
on your podcast.
Mm-hmm.
You guys have basically gaslighted me my entire pregnancy, and I'm not
Mm-hmm.
taking it. I know that this baby is coming out of me. I'm a human being with
Mm-hmm.
nerve endings, and I feel
Right.
like
Yeah.
human. And so finally, I was just like, you know
Mm.
what? I'm going to push. So if you
Mm-hmm.
guys would like to participate, fine. If not, also fine. Um, and through my second pregnancy, I did read that sometimes women do want to push a little bit before they're ready. So
Mm-hmm.
luckily, the nurse at that point kind of saw that I was serious, and agreed to check me. And she was like, oh, yeah, okay. Like he's here. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so my doctor was gone, couldn't come back. So then they're telling me to wait for this new doctor that I've never met. And then this new doctor comes in and here's the story of this like pushy teenager that is, demanding she push and all these things. Meanwhile, my body is just actively pushing for me at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I will never forget, as long as I live, this woman putting on 3 pairs of gloves. And now I'm a nurse, so I understand
Mm-hmm.
now why you would put 3 pairs of gloves on. But in the moment of being told for probably like 30 minutes now, don't push, I swear they were the slowest donning of gloves I've ever seen. I just was like, we need a third pair.
Uh,
Y'all tested me for everything. I don't have anything. Please just catch the baby. And so then
wow.
it comes down to like, okay, everyone in the room agrees that I can participate in labor now and actively start pushing. And
Mm-hmm.
I had my parents, mom and dad. I had my son's father's parents, mom and dad. I had my son's father. I had a
Mm-hmm.
nurse, a
Mm-hmm.
doctor, a nursing student. It was a crowded room.
Yeah.
And they couldn't see the monitor where the
Mm-hmm.
contractions were. And I shared this with
Mm-hmm.
you previously. So they were just not allow me to push if they couldn't see the monitor. So they're like shuffling people out of the room. The doctor's like, no, you can't push yet. Um, and again, I was just at that point completely over it. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
can anyone in this room believe that I can feel the baby?
Mm-hmm.
I can feel my body contracting. Why do we need
Mm-hmm.
that machine over there
Mm-hmm.
to confirm that
Mm-hmm.
my body is in fact contracting? It's why, I mean, you
Right.
can see it. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
tiny person. I was a very tiny little pregnant person. You could see my abdomen. So it was just the reliance on machines, and
Mm-hmm.
external information, and never a moment in the entire 9 months that I was pregnant was I ever encouraged to listen to my body, to talk to my body, to really drop in and connect with my baby. It was just very, we know we have the answers, and you go sit over there and we'll tell you what to do. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that was pregnancy and delivery number one.
First time when you told me a little bit about this, literally, I was like, I think I was reading it, and I cried because I just sadly I can't deny that that's not happening at the bedside. Actually, that happens too often, you know. So, and it became what's more sad and concerning to me is almost like in a normal, just normal interaction at the hospital, trust machine
Mhm.
over your own body. So that was literally like end of my career after 23 years. Like there was many times, I'm not gonna lie, like I couldn't really speak up for my patients. And sometimes maybe I was in it, but more I was, starting to opening my heart and more there was more, that my consciousness was like evolving. I
Mhm.
just couldn't be part of that. Like I started to see what I was doing. I think it's really human. Is it really human care? And that's not just happening at the labor and delivery room. I think, you're a nurse too. So in all field, do you see that a lot?
Absolutely.
they feel.
Yes, it's very challenging to meet your patients where they are and give them honest information, because there is a political underworking in the hospital system, and there is a hierarchy.
Mm,
um, um, it's like, even now I want to be so careful with my words, right? Because
mhm,
I am still
mhm,
a nurse and I'm
mhm,
still in the hospital,
mhm,
and that's why I love that you're doing this podcast, because you've stepped away from the bedside, which gives you
mhm.
freedom to be a
Right.
little bit more candid,
Mhm.
how it
Right.
goes. But not all providers are equal in their
Mhm,
skill level and their
mhm,
compassion level and their understanding and their intuition.
mhm,
And so when you are at the bedside and you see, I'll speak for myself. When I'm at the bedside and I see a provider that is not giving the care that I know another provider would do, there's really almost nothing I can do about it.
mhm,
And especially, I work at night, and I imagine that labor and delivery, even during the day, is very similar to at night, because it's the doctor that's there
mhm,
on call. It's
mhm.
the doctor that's
Right.
there that week. So if the
Mhm.
doctor that I would trust more isn't here, I can't get them for you.
Right. Right. Mhm,
So if there is a doctor out there that would have allowed me to trust my body, it didn't matter. They weren't going to be available in that moment anyway. And so, how do you navigate that as the nurse at the bedside and
mhm,
give the patient the care that they need, while also respecting that this is the
mhm,
provider that you have in this moment, and it's pretty much not negotiable in a really acute
mhm,
situation. Sure, long
mhm,
term, you can change practices and things like that. But when the baby's
mhm,
coming out, or I work in ICU and the patient is
mhm,
having something really acute happen, like, this is who's here in this room
mhm.
right now.
Right. See, I think you said really important things. So if we educate ourselves properly and not just gaining the knowledge, but we start, educating in a sense of trust, start trusting our body. Like you said in the beginning of your pregnancy, even though you was 18, you had that courage to ask, can I just see one doctor?
Mhm.
So I'm assuming, I don't know, am I right? Did you wanted to see one doctor so you can have that build a relationship and you can pick someone you
Very
can
overwhelmed.
trust?
Yeah, I was getting very overwhelmed with how different their responses were. So
Mm-hmm,
I would ask a
mm-hmm,
question, and maybe I had similar question on the next visit. So I would ask
mm-hmm,
again, and it would be such a different answer that it wasn't building on what I had already asked. It was just
mm.
creating more confusion.
Right, right.
And I can come up with specific examples with my daughter for that after she was born, because that is recently. So I don't remember exactly like what type of things I was asking them. I just
Mm-hmm,
really remember that feeling of like, why do you guys all have something different to say on how this could go and what to expect and what's normal and not normal?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And I think that that also starts to chip away at my own intuition, which is something that happened again the second time around in a much different way, but the same scenario where it's like, I'm thinking I'm seeing this, but then everybody has such different views on what it could be. It's like, how do I take my own knowledge and the external knowledge and put them together when
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
external knowledge is contradicting itself?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm. And then there are nowadays just too much informations out there.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would agree.
Mm-hmm. So I feel like true intelligence is getting it, not just getting information, but you get information and actually able to filter out with the clarity. So it's a very, very important, but then it's complicated subject as well. Yeah.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a cut and dry black and white scenario.
Mm-hmm.
It's just,
Mm-hmm.
it's all of healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
There's very few things in healthcare that are A or B option. I mean, you've been through nursing school. It's a joke amongst all nurses in nursing school. Which answer is most right?
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
all the same. It's like, which one is
Ah,
most right?
oh,
And
I love
so,
those questions and answers.
so how are we supposed to have our patients understand and weed out which one is most right when you have
Mhm,
A, B, C, and D, and they're all right. They're
mhm,
all the
mhm,
right
right.
answer, but which one is the most right? And
Mhm,
that's part of going
mhm,
and becoming a nurse. And um 16 years in, it's still sometimes very hard to figure out the most
mhm,
right. And
mhm,
so as a
mhm,
patient, even with because
mhm,
I don't have any labor and delivery background outside of school. So I can read a research article and sort through what is good research, what is not good research, and help find information to fuel my intuitive
mhm,
choices. Uh,
mhm,
but I really don't know what I would do if I didn't have that knowledge.
mhm,
If I was an arborist and had never had to learn how to do
mhm,
research and research articles, because there's a lot of research and information out there that isn't quality.
mhm. Right, right.
And you can find almost any article to support the view that you want it to support. Truthfully, if you look hard enough, you can find someone somewhere who did a research of 4 people and two
Mhm,
of them had this
yeah.
outcome. And so
Mhm.
now we've proven that red wine is in fact a health food kind of thing,
Right.
you know what I mean? So
Yeah. I'm gonna keep believe red wine is healthy. But I mean, ultimately, like it really comes down to it is the patient's choice. Um, and the when you make a choice, like I keep saying this, align with your true self. So when I say education and the researching information is not just knowing knowledge base, but like I really hope this podcast will bring some awareness to really getting to know ourselves and our body, especially that we're bringing the topic of giving birth, which is our body knows how to do it. We've been doing this for ever since, human exist and woman existence. That's why we're here, because our mother, our mother's mother, our mother's mother's mothers was keep giving birth, right? So that tells you right there, our body's been doing this. So isn't it really kind of, if you take that in, isn't it really simple that, okay, the first phase, the woman's body knows
Mhm.
to give birth.
A woman in a coma can deliver a baby naturally.
Yes, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and if we have that as a fundamental, like on labor and delivery or prenatal care, I feel like can be a lot more healthier. But as a woman, we have to realize that, we have to start from somewhere. Yeah, I feel like being at the bedside, I see a lot the woman's been giving up power, during birth because we're so afraid to be responsible on outcome. I feel like that's the big reason that women start giving the power of our own body. Because if something happens to my body, my baby, then I'm gonna be responsible for that. So you know what? I'm gonna let doctor make all the decision for me.
And that was exactly how I felt during my first pregnancy.
Yeah.
Was exactly that. I feel these things and I'm thinking these things, but I certainly don't have the knowledge base to be confident. And
Mm-hmm.
that little tiny voice inside, especially as such a young woman, I didn't,
Mm-hmm.
I still lived at home with my parents. I had knew nothing of the world. So, um, not only are you an adult, but you're a doctor and this is what you do for a living. And kind of who am I to say
Mm-hmm.
otherwise?
Mm-hmm.
And I also want to add to your sharing is I don't understand why everyone wants to share their horror stories with pregnant women.
Mhm.
It
Right.
is almost like a fetish in our
Mhm.
culture to
Mhm.
share horror stories. And somebody told me that this is how they respond to things that they don't want to hear. And it really helped me through my second pregnancy was, what is your intention in sharing that with me? So
Mhm.
tell me how you almost died. What is your intention in sharing that with me, seeing that I'm 7 months pregnant? And I
Mhm.
think it allows people to kind of drop in and have a moment of, well, what was my intention of sharing
Mhm.
that?
Mhm.
Because I clearly haven't gone through that. So we're not going to connect and have a connection there with a
Mhm.
me too. Let's sort of like feel how that feels and discover it together moment. So are you trying to warn me? Like, what is that? What is your intention? So, um, that kind of segues me into my daughter, if you're ready.
Mhm. Yes, yes.
Okay.
Mila.
So, speaking of aligning divine will with my own personal free will, this pregnancy was all of those things. So, it took us 10 years of trying. It almost ended
Mhm.
my marriage.
Mhm.
Uh, I don't know if you know this, but when I went to school, Chris and I were separated. We were not living together because the
Mhm.
fertility issues had become so heavy.
Mhm.
Uh, we realized that we wanted to be together regardless of the outcome. And so life went on. I did my first few years of school. I really started to know myself more intimately on a spiritual, intuitive, aligned level. And so it was 2019 when we split. I wasn't sure. I'm done trying. We had done some IUIs. We tried
Mhm.
naturally. I've done every holistic thing under the sun. I mean, good gravy. We like did it upside down in the garden under the full moon. Like if there's like something to happen, like I'm in it. And it just wasn't happening. Um, and so for me, I did not feel aligned with IVF. It was not a process that I was interested in at all. It was a very hard no for me. Um, and so I went to school. I'm trying to heal this, be okay without, growing my family. And I'm in the bathroom at work. And I hear this voice that says, do IVF. And I was like, I don't really want to. Excuse me, strange random voice. I'd rather not. And so I went home and I talked to my husband, and he's like, well, you know that I'm all in. He's like, I would love to do it. And so we came to the agreement that we wanted to do it as a period at the end of the chapter, at the end of this book that we could put away and start a new book. And so that book may have a child, it may not have a child. But I really was obviously, you want to get pregnant doing IVF. But for me, the decision was much more, I cannot continue on this what if path. And
Mhm.
so I really didn't want to do it. So I like the night before our retrieval, I like picked a fight with my husband and went paddle boarding with my girlfriends and all the reasons I shouldn't do this and everything else. And I jump off my paddleboard into the river and I heard the same voice, do IVF. And I was like, fuck, okay, I'm going through with it, ladies. And so we went through the process. There's tons to unpack there. But anyway, so I had the transfer almost a year and a half after my retrieval and came home and slept. And I mean, the very next day woke up just drinking like gallons of water a day. Um,
Mhm.
so I was like, I'm pregnant. I know that it worked. I know that it worked. It's funny, my cat wouldn't leave my side, but again, 10 years down the road of trying, my intuition was bruised to say the least.
Mhm.
And so we go to the doctor. I had taken some positive pregnancy tests at home. They had positive blood work for me. So, okay, now I need to have my first ultrasound. And they do it very, very early in the IVF process. And so they could not find her heartbeats. They could not find her. So they thought I had a blighted ovum. So for those that don't know, a blighted ovum is when the baby starts to grow, the placenta, everything, but there's no actual baby in there. So your body is pregnant because you have a placenta, but there's no baby. So those will end in miscarriage, early miscarriages. And so then a hurricane comes and my next follow-up appointment is canceled. And still, I'm like, I really feel pregnant. I'm tired. I'm thirsty. Like, I don't feel
Mm-hmm.
good. But now I'm told that it could just be my body tricking me, right? And that it's this blighted ovum. And so my poor husband does not have a baby inside of him to drop into, and he's just beside himself. We have to go out of town. It is almost a month before I can have my next ultrasounds. Meanwhile, my body's changing. All of these things are happening. I'm waiting any day for the shoe to drop. Is it going to be here? Is it not going to? What? And so we finally have our next ultrasound, and our little baby girl has a heartbeat. So excited. So I immediately start doing as much information as I can find on how to have a natural childbirth. I want the classes. I want to figure out how to help myself manage the pain.
Mm-hmm.
Because at this point, I know at the very least that it does, in fact, involve some pain. So how
Mm-hmm.
can I manage that?
Right.
So I decided that I wanted to go to a birthing center because I felt like I would be held more in my intention to have a natural labor and a natural pregnancy. I really was not pleased with the medical model that I received before. So I go to the birthing center, and I'll put a little bookmark there and go back. During the IVF process, I had a very tiny fibroid, and I asked the doctor to take it out. I had this feeling that this fibroid was going to be a problem. And she's like, it's on the outside of your uterus. It's like smaller than a cherry. We're not worried about it. And I was like, but I am really worried about it.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward to the first appointment, months of hormones later, a new pregnancy hormones later, and you're giving yourself injections for hormones. So hormones, fibroids like hormones.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My
Right.
fibroid was growing.
Mm-hmm.
And for the first probably 4 months, they could never find her heartbeat with the Doppler because the
Oh.
fibroid was low and was moving her where she was not. So every appointment,
Mm.
my husband's heart stopped because he's like, oh my God, they would have to get so many new people. We got to find the best one here. And the whole time I was like, I know she's in there and I know she's fine. And I'm like literally having a kick out of the whole thing because I could listen to my body and I could connect with my daughter and I could feel the truth of what was actually happening in my body because that experience during my first delivery when I knew my body was telling me the truth and I listened to it and I was right. I had
Mhm.
that confidence to be like, no, I know my truth. I know. And so many women just know. They just know
Mhm.
something is wrong when nobody's
Mhm.
listening to them. They just
Mhm.
know that
Mhm.
everything's okay when nobody's listening to them. And uh,
Mhm.
I just want to say, like, in agreement with everything that you've shared, like, we can trust that voice.
Mhm.
We can
Mhm.
advocate for it and we can fight
Right.
for it. And we can connect with it, even if what everyone else is telling us is
Mhm.
different.
Mhm.
Um, and I could go off on a tangent on that, but I'll stick to the point of my pregnancy
Yeah.
and delivery. So I finally learned where she was because I kind of was paying attention to like where on my belly they were finding her heart rate. So I started saying, check here, because that's pretty close to where they found her last time. And there she was. So this fibroid was growing, and the birthing center decided to discharge me from their practice. So I fully respect their decision to discharge me. However, when the practitioner who called me, She basically just fear mongered me for 20 minutes on the phone to the point that I got off the phone in tears. I mean, she just went over every scenario that was possibly going to go wrong during my delivery and all of the reasons.
Mhm,
And it wasn't necessary. You don't
mhm,
need to scare me out of being here.
mhm,
Why? Again, what is your intention in telling me this? You're
mhm, mhm.
discharging me. It's not up for discussion or debate.
Right.
So why
Mhm,
put so many fear-based ideas in my mind?
right. Mhm,
And so then I go
mm,
to honestly the only practice that I could find. Nobody was returning my phone calls. I couldn't find a
mhm,
doctor for my
mhm.
pregnancy.
How many
Uh,
weeks were you at this point?
so I was getting close to 6 months. I don't remember exactly how far along. Maybe
Mhm,
like 24 weeks-ish
mhm.
feels
Yeah,
appropriate.
yeah. Mhm.
Um, so I end up with COVID, pregnant with
You?
no doctor.
Oh.
Can't find a doctor. So, anyways, we won't go too much into the pregnancy, but it was just all I had was myself and my intuition throughout
Mhm,
this because the doctors were not there for me. They were not able to find her. They couldn't tell me if everything was normal and not normal. Then I finally find a new practice. They send me to every specialist you can think of because I'm over 35 and I've had IVF. So something must be wrong, right? She had echocardiograms. She had all these ultrasounds. Nobody could find anything. Try as they might. I'm just like,
mhm,
hey guys, what about the fibroid? So the
mhm,
fibroid keeps growing. No one is worried about this fibroid but me. And I'm like, this fibroid, you guys, what's up? Like it's huge. And
mhm,
now she's so big you can't see it anymore. So
mhm,
like, what are we doing here with this fibroid? Um, and they just continued. They made me do weekly testing, weekly heart, so many things. Meanwhile, my little baby girl never stopped moving. She was just going in there. I could feel how healthy she was. I just knew that she was fine, but she was breech. And so
mhm,
I started doing all the things, acupuncture and spinning babies and all these things that you can do to try to turn your breech baby. I
mhm,
just, she wasn't going to turn. I knew the fibroid was in the way.
mhm, mhm.
No,
So
we'll
she
try
has too small space to turn
to turn.
because fibroid got too big and kind
And
of
it's
took over her
normal.
space, right?
Yep. So the doctors, no, it's a fibroid. It's not, it's fine. It'll move out of the way, and then they want to try to turn her. What is it called when they turn
A
them?
version,
Yes.
version, yeah.
So they want to take me into the OR with the whole team there in case something goes wrong and try to turn her. And I'm like, no, you want to force an unborn child to do something that it naturally knows how to do. You
Mhm,
guys already tried to do this with my first baby, and I agreed no. And it was funny. I told her no, and she insisted she explain it to me. I was like,
mhm.
okay, I'll listen to your speech, but it's still a no. So I had to sit there politely for 5 minutes and listen to her speech about all the things that they can do to turn the baby and everything else. And I was like, no, because she cannot be born vaginally, y'all. The fibroid is in the way, and I just knew it. I had nothing to prove it. And so I agreed to have an elective C-section because that's what felt safest for me and for her. I kind of moved my desire for a natural birth over into my desire to have a gentle C-section. And I really advocated for that. I was very lucky that my practice had heard of gentle C-sections and
Mhm,
were on board with it. So the day of her delivery, they delivered her 2 days before her due date. So they let me go right up until the end. Um, and we knew for sure her due date, right? Because it was IVF.
mhm,
And so it was amazing. It was a wonderful
mhm,
experience. I shifted all of my meditations into like being calm and confident and comfortable in this setting. And
mhm,
my husband likes rap music. That's probably not the right genre, but whatever. That's what he likes. So we're listening to this song in the room waiting for the nurse to
Uh-huh.
come in. She comes in and she knows the song. So then
Uh-huh.
her and my husband are like singing the song, we're all dancing and like having a great time.
Oh, that's
So
great.
immediately, like we've connected and she
Uh-huh.
likes us. She's like, just the whole time she puts on like fun music in the operating room when we're getting ready. She takes total care of Chris. He's like, look, I might faint, I don't know, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
into this, like I'm nervous. They
Mm-hmm.
gave him care, everything. I just felt so supported. We were making jokes with each other and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it was great. And then it came time for her to come out. They let me pick the music I wanted playing, and
Mm-hmm.
um they let me see through the drapes. So I got to, watch her be born. They
Mm-hmm.
did take her and warm her and things pretty quickly. I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
immediately with her. But almost within just a couple of minutes, she came to me. I was able to nurse her right there in the operating
Mm-hmm.
room. And as
Wow.
I'm holding my baby girl,
Mm-hmm.
the whole room is like, oh my God, do you see that? And I'm like, what? Like, what do we see? I know she's cool, but like that does not sound like it's baby related. The
Uh-huh.
fibroid was like this big. It was like almost the size of a football. They're like, this is one of the biggest fibroids we've ever seen. And it was degenerating. So that means that it had lost some of
Mm-hmm.
its blood supply and was actively in the dying process. So I have been
Mm-hmm.
having all this weird pain. And I was like, I don't know if these are contractions. Like, I just don't know what's going on here. I don't think it's contractions. Anyways, it was the fibroid dying inside of
Oh
me.
man.
And the doctor told me that if I would have another week, I would have been having emergency surgery because of
Mm-hmm.
how bad this fibroid looked inside of me and how she definitely could not have been born naturally because it was like
Uh-huh.
completely covering my cervix.
Mm-hmm.
And so they took it out right then and there.
Mm-hmm.
Thank gosh, because
Mm-hmm.
that was another thing I was really praying for,
Nice.
was that it could come
Mm-hmm.
out, because a lot of times they will not take your fibroid out during your
Mm-hmm.
C-section.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Less.
That's a whole thing. So luckily mine had degenerated enough
Mm-hmm.
that they were like, look, it has to come out. And so I really believe that that fibroid took all the extra hormones and emotions and chaos that I was
Mm-hmm.
experiencing from IVF and was like Mila's little buddy and was,
Mm-hmm.
okay, we're done now. It's time for both of us to come out. Like I've
That's
survived.
great
If
ways to look
that
at it.
tiny little fibroid came out before the
Uh-huh.
implantation, like who knows what would have happened.
Uh-huh.
Um, but had I not fully leaned into the ability to trust myself and my body
Mm-hmm.
and my
Mm-hmm.
intuition, my divine knowing, I would
Mm-hmm.
have been in shambles by the time my
Mm-hmm.
delivery because of
Mm-hmm.
how, I mean, it was weekly information about how something was going to be wrong with my baby. Perfect. There's
Mm-hmm.
absolutely nothing. She
Mm-hmm.
was calling me, but 6 weeks and
Mm-hmm.
she's
Um, so see this, like today, your story and wisdom we try to share is not to only advocate for natural delivery or just vaginal delivery or no medication, or it's not like that. It's like you had C-section with Mila, but you had greater and more satisfying experience because you was able to you put your feet down and I know my body, and you're more mature. Of course, now you're 36 years old versus you was 18, and you truly use the modern medicine advantage
yeah.
for you and Mila.
Mhm.
Yeah, so your experience is a lot more happier than vaginal delivery that you had 19 years ago. So it's not about like just focusing on outcome. Oh, we have to have natural delivery. It's not that. It's more of giving oneself, myself, and yourself respect and trust and know our body. That's how it's so resonating with me with this purpose of this podcast. First of all, you have to know that your body is temple and your body is really the wisdom it carries from
Sacred.
generation and generation, especially during birthing process.
Yeah. And there is something beautiful about what modern medicine has to offer, but it's modern medicine. It's only been around for what, 100 years or so. You know, as you said, women have been giving birth for centuries. And it was actually indigenous tribes in Africa that first started C-sections. I think I shared. Not modern C-sections did not come from modern medicine. Modern medicine learned about C-sections and then took them into their own practice and made them what they are today. And so, you know, women do need help with birth sometimes. It's not always going to be this magical carpet ride experience that I feel a lot of women in the holistic birthing space want to convince you of. So then when you are a woman who's saying, that doesn't feel right for me, you're encouraged by that side of the aisle to not listen to your body.
Right.
And when you have the medical model who's looking for something and you're like, I don't know, I feel like this is okay, you're encouraged not to listen to that. So I'm just so grateful that you're putting this out into the world, because it's so hard to find information and encouragement to just trust yourself in your own inner knowing, because everything that I was finding and coming across was trust something outside of yourself. Trust that everything will be okay, even though you have a gut feeling it won't. Trust that you know things are going to not work out, even though you have a gut feeling will, and just do what is best for you. And you know, I guess I still don't really know how to overcome that feeling that I had with Jason. If something goes wrong, you know, and that
is really hard. Yeah.
It's challenging. I think it's going to be different for everyone. You know, you can't just tell a woman, well, maybe it would have gone wrong anyways. But the truth that's coming up for me right now is that for me, I believe that if I trusted myself and I followed my gut and something went wrong, it would be easier to live with than if I followed an outside source and betrayed myself and something went wrong. And not everyone's going to feel that way, but I think for me, that's how I felt with my daughter was, you know what, something could go wrong here, but I'm going to have to believe myself and not betray myself.
It takes great courage to, you know, what you just spoke about, that statement. I'm very 100% with you on that, but I realized it is very difficult subject to push on to somebody else who doesn't feel that way or doesn't have a courage to make a decision
or doesn't have a supportive partner.
You
know, I had the benefit of having a voice in a bathroom tell me to do IVF, and then I got pregnant. So my husband was like, girl, you know what you're talking about. Okay. I sold him. He was like, whoop, like he says it all the time. I'm like, I still don't. I got nothing there. But had that not happened and we got pregnant naturally and it was easy and all the things, or there's a lot of ways to get pregnant. So I don't want to say that that's the only way. But anyways, had I not had that moment that really sold him on my intuition, I don't know if he would have been as willing to believe me when I was like, I know everything is okay.
And at the same time, when you were saying, I know everything's okay, you was doing your best. You was taking care of yourself. You was researching, you know, whatever was aligning with your true self again, you was doing your best. Yeah, I know you, so I can say that. Yeah. Yes. Right? Yeah. Am I right? Yeah. Yes. Girl, I know you know.
It was a hard pregnancy, girl. I barely made it through alive, but I was definitely stay alive.
But you know, I want to add some more to your statement about making the choice and what if something bad outcome came out of this birthing. So I think that goes with the kind of same thing as some people likes to share horrifying birthing stories. There's that fear band around our earth and humanity. Like people somehow so focused on just the fear side, but no, we can always look at the stories and situations from different perspectives if we're open to it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's called the drama triangle. You're either a victim, a perpetrator, or a rescuer.
Mm,
In
mm,
any of those roles, you're not in your truth and you're not in your own power. And I
mhm,
believe that those roles are so steeped in our unconscious and so
mhm,
encouraged. I mean, right now, I see a world, especially amongst the young people. I have a child in his early 20s who it's almost prided upon to be a victim. Like who gets to be the most victim?
mhm,
Now that's not to say that there are not people going through great suffering in this world. That mother and father are going through absolutely deep, deep soul suffering,
mhm,
I
mhm,
imagine.
mhm,
Um, but that doesn't mean you have to choose to step into the role of a victim, because if you're in that role, you have to have a perpetrator. You have to
mhm,
have someone who did something wrong. Who was the
mhm,
wrong? Who could they blame? Could they blame the midwife? And they have to have a rescuer who can come to rescue them from this pain. And if we can step outside of those roles, we can be in our divine truth and power.
mhm. Yeah,
Easier said than done.
right, right. Yeah, yeah.
But how different would maternal care be if the litigation in this society was not as heavy as it is?
Right. Totally.
And we do have to take a little responsibility for that as a society.
Mhm,
It can't all be, oh, medicine is so bad, because
mhm,
you do have to protect yourself as a practitioner, and one way to protect yourself is to remain completely in control. And if
mhm,
I'm in control as the practitioner, you might not be able to be in control as the patient.
mhm,
So I think it's scary as well for practitioners to give up some of that control over to
mhm,
patients because
mhm,
of fear of being
mhm,
sued.
mhm. Right, exactly. Yeah. It's almost taking care of liability care
Yeah. I
than
think
human
that's what
care.
healthcare is these days. It's liability
Hmm.
care,
Hmm. Yeah.
especially in labor and delivery world.
Hmm. Yeah. Mm. So yeah, there's a really vicious cycle going on, you
Mhm.
know, but we have to start from somewhere.
Yeah, just talking about it, sharing
Hmm.
stories, and empowering each
Hmm.
other to start to listen. Just start
Yeah.
to listen to what your body has to say. You never know where it will
Hmm.
take you. I'm somebody who wanted to have a natural pregnancy and a natural birth and have the least amount of medical intervention possible. And I went to the most medical intervention that you can have. And I did all of it through intuition and knowing and meditation and insight, surrender and alignment. So there's no reason that you cannot lean into all of the modalities available to you to be an aligned person.
Hmm. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been an
Hmm.
honor.
Oh, how do you feel? Do you feel complete about sharing your story, or is there more remains that you like to speak some more?
I think I just want to share that it's challenging. So if you're out there and you're not sure what to do and you've like stumbled across this conversation, um,
Mhm,
as much as I can say, oh, I followed my intuition and things like that. Um, the first few days of my daughter's birth, all of that went out the window, and I lost myself completely in that postpartum phase. And I wasn't able to hear my own voice and to trust my own voice. And it took me a while to come back. So it's okay to not know, to not hear.
mhm,
Just set the intention. And if it comes, it comes. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. Because if there's one thing moms are good at, it's beating ourselves up. And so I
Right.
wouldn't want somebody to hear my story about how I listen to my own inner voice and use it as a way to weaponize themselves for not knowing what the answer is.
Right. Mhm. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah. Phew. I know you say one thing and you're like, can't forget this thing, and you say this thing and that, but then don't turn against to yourself. That sounds like a story of my life being in healing school last 3 years, We're tended to turn against ourselves and being harsh on ourselves, especially women, like you said. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
yeah, we're here to share our stories, like openly, authentically, to empower each other, not to turn against to yourself or pointing a finger to others.
I agree. I agree.
And let's share our beautiful and amazing, unique birthing stories to empower each other. And together we can really change. It doesn't matter how long it's going to take. I'm not saying it's going to change the next month or next year. It could be our grandbaby's generation. Who knows? Yeah, but we can change it together. So, Amy, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Sol.
Mhm. Me too. It's been really honor. Yeah. Then bye everybody and see you on our next episode. Bye. Bye.